Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to Chat with the Author, where I talk about one of my 11 published books. Yes, 11. Pat myself on the back there. And today's topic is on this book, The Empowered Divine Feminine, Becoming an Unstoppable Woman in the 21st Century and Beyond. And today I am showing you the brand new cover for this book. This book got a makeover. It had a black cover previously, but I felt that the new cover needed to evoke the emotion of the topic of the book. And as you can see here, this is the woman feeling liberated and happy, seeing the sun through the rain. There's also kind of like, this was not intended, but I feel like with the little arrow here, there's like a Native American theming, which is like connection to the land. And I feel like that is very pertinent to the topic. So I'm going to show you the hardcover. This book is in hardcover. I go like that. And it is also in paperback. This is the paperback version. And so here, I'll hold up both, and it's in Kindle and Audible as well. So we're going to be talking about this book, The Empowered Divine Feminine, Becoming an Unstoppable Woman in the 21st Century and Beyond. And I want to announce to you, whether you are watching this on replay or whether you're watching this live, if you happen to pop in, please do say hi, put something in the chat. If you're watching this on replay, put something in the comments, say hello, and tell me what you think about this chat with the author. This gives you more information about the books, more information on the topic. Eventually, it'll be engagement with the author, right? Being able to engage and ask some questions about the topic at hand. But I want to talk about this for a minute because each week, I'm going to be giving away a signed copy of the book that I'm talking about. In this case, it'll be this paperback book. So a signed copy, paperback, if you live in the United States. Sorry, let me rephrase that. If you live in the United States is what I meant to say. And all you need to do is sign up for my Empowering Thoughts newsletter on my website. And the link is in the info box below or beside this video. Click through the link, sign up for my Empowering Thoughts newsletter. And next week, I will pick the winner for this week as to who wins the signed copy of my book. I'm sorry that it's only open to people in the US, but the problem is that postage, even sending this to Canada, the postage is more than the book. So I've tried it before, postage to Canada or Mexico or the Caribbean, $25 to send the book. So it's open to people that live in a US address, or even if you live abroad and you happen to know someone who has a US address and you'd like to send it to them, by all means, again, sign up for my Empowering Thoughts newsletter. And next week I will announce the winner and I will send you a copy of the book. So we are doing that. So I will give away a book each week that I do the live stream. This week, it's this one. So what I really want to talk about is the basis for the book, but more specifically, because there's a lot of topics within the book itself. More specifically, I want to talk about feminine confidence or confidence for women and competition, because those two things are crazy in our own sense of self-empowerment, self-worth, self-respect, understanding how we feel empowered day in and day out as women. And that's the reason why I wrote the book, because I coach a lot of divine feminines in the twin flame camp of things. So I coach a lot of women, and empowerment is always difficult. It's the pathway, the road to empowerment. So I really want to talk about confidence and competition. And the reason why a lot of women feel this sense of lack of confidence and this sense of competition in the world, in the workplace, in place, right? Whether you're working or playing, but also competition with other women, which really sounds insanely crazy. But if you're a woman, you know this to be true. Or if you're a man observing a woman in this female competition, whether it's personal, whether it's in work related business or whether it's just another woman that you don't even know, there's this sense of like what some people might refer to as cattiness. There is this sense of criticism toward other women, sense of competition with other women. And I'd like to take the thread backward a little bit so that we can really get a feel. And I do this in the book. I want us to get the feel for why. Because you don't have the same sense of competition and lack of self-confidence in men as you do in women. You just don't. And you might get competition among men, but it's always friendly competition. It's always like, it might be cutthroat at work, but even when they compete in sports or playing games, there's always this sense of more friendliness. Whereas in female competition, it tends to be a lot more cutthroat. It tends to be a lot more catty. So let's rewind backward and try to get to the genesis of this, because this will really help you in your sense of self-empowerment. If you can rewind and get to the point at which you realize that it was societal conditioning that bred you to be in this place where you have the lack of self-confidence and feeling this sense of competition with other women, whether it be for a mate or a job or just in general, right? It's more prominent for a woman to criticize the appearance of another woman, let's say, than it is for a man to criticize the appearance of a woman. It's really more prevalent with women criticizing other women. And so when we go back to the genesis, we really need to go back. And it's funny, I've been watching, this is my first time watching it through, and I know it's an older series, but I've been watching The Marvelous Mrs. Marvel. I think that's the title. And that sounds like too many M's, but I think that is the title, Marvelous Mrs. Marvel. It's on Amazon Prime. The series takes place in the late 1950s and the 1960s, early 1960s. And it's perfect for this topic. It's actually perfect for this topic because in my book, I talk about why are we the way we are today when it comes to women empowerment. And really, it goes back to the 1960s, the early 1960s, when women started becoming more liberated with the women's movement. Now, the women's movement started well before the 1960s, but as we're getting toward the 1960s from the late 1950s, that's when things started to erupt in a big way. Because in the late 1950s, women did not have a lot of rights. Even though they had the right to vote, they did not have a lot of other rights. A lot of women worked during World War II, but then as soon as the men came home from war, they were back at home having babies. And so when we look backward a little bit, when we look backward into the 1950s and early 1960s, when women were starting to assert their rights and saying, no, even though I've had kids, I do have the right to work. I do have the right to a bank account without my husband's approval. I do have the right to have credit, for example, because women were not even allowed to have credit on their own until 1974. So before that, women were getting married, right? Before that time, women got married and they had babies. And women, or girls rather, were considered to be a major inconvenience. So the families had to find a suitable man for the woman to marry. And that is why the whole dowry system was around, because it's almost like, here, marry my daughter. I will give you money. I will give you cows and goats and gold and whatever property in order for you to marry my daughter, because the daughter was seen as a major inconvenience. So throughout time, we've developed this thought pattern that has been passed on by our mothers and our grandmothers and has been passed on through the generations of not very long ago. And that's one thing that it's important to keep in mind, that this was not very long ago. So we've been socially conditioned and primed to believe that we're not really worthy, that we're not really of value, that we're not really worthy, that it was a major inconvenience to our mothers and fathers to try to marry us off so that we could have a good life. And so that's been really hardwired in our DNA, if you will. And again, from not very long ago. And I think that's really the important point here, is that even my mother was in that camp. So that is one generation before me. That's one generation removed. And when I was born, women could still not get credit on their own, sign a loan, get a bank account without the signature of a man, albeit the father or the husband. So that was not very long ago. So women were raised with this notion that they weren't really that valuable. And on top of it, when women's liberation started in the 1960s, just think about that mentality. I'm not very valuable, but I still want to get a job. I'm not very valuable, but I still want to have credit on my own. I'm not very valuable, but I still want to get married and have kids and have a job. And so what women had to do in the early 1960s was enter the competitive workplace of men. And when they had to do that, the persona that they needed to take on was that of having the persona that was way more masculine than feminine in order to enter into the competitive world of men. And thus started this sense of not having enough self-confidence and also needing to compete with other women to have very few spots in the workplace. And so you had to show that you were more masculine in many ways. You were more aggressive. You were more assertive. You were more cutthroat. You would do anything to get to that place where you could have a position of work. And so since this mentality really started in the early 1960s and before, but more prominently in the 1960s, that really developed into this bigger snowball effect of women not only being able to not live in their feminine energy because it was frowned upon, because feminine energy was truly seen as weak. Feminine energy was seen as majorly inconvenient. Feminine energy was seen as not something you wanted to show to a society that was trying to open up so that you could enter the workplace, for example. And therefore, women for decades after that, including the generation that I grew up in, women were really not allowed to still embrace and stay in their femininity, their feminine energy, and stay in a career-oriented pathway. It was either or. You had to pick and choose. Now, even though the women of my generation, Gen X, I'll say it right now, could have it all or wanted to have it all, something had to give. And so we were still really encouraged to compete with men or be more aggressive or more assertive or show that we could do better or be better. And again, that also included direct competition with other women, which made relationships not great between women and men, and relationships not great between women and women. So women kind of get it from both sides, if you will. They get it with the lack of self-confidence because of this sense of feeling unworthy. And then they get it because they have to compete in a world of men in work and finances and among other things. And then they're also directly competing against other women. So then there's this sense, as I mentioned in the beginning, there's this sense of cattiness. There's this sense of trying to cut down other women in order to raise yourself up, because that's the way women had to do it when they were trying to assert their rights, which doesn't make it right, right? It doesn't make it right. And so now in 2024, we're at a very different place. Now, I would wager to say that there are still inequities. There are still inequities, right? We know this. We know there are still inequities in pay. There's still inequities in positions in higher board level positions, right? We know this. There aren't as many women CEOs of companies as there are men. We know that there are still inequities. But things in 2024, by the time we've reached, 1960 all the way through 2024, things have changed quite a bit. And they've changed so much to the fact that we don't really need to embrace these older values, like not feeling worthy, these older values, like not feeling we have any control over the situation, and feeling like we need to compete with other women directly or indirectly, right? We need to compete with other women in order to move ahead, get a better husband, for example, which was really the case. And you think about the 1950s and 60s, the era that I'm referring to in particular, but also to get a position in a university, for example, that it was so rare that they would admit women into universities that you had to compete with other women to get there, or to get a job, for example. So we're at a different place, but our mentality hasn't much changed. And so when we think about empowerment, it's really important to think about, why do I still, in some respects, lack the self-confidence to do the things that I would like to do without direct competition with others, without cutting people down or thinking lesser of other people? Why do I still feel not up to par, either with others, other women, or with men? So these are just old, outdated notions. These are old paradigms that have truly just been passed down through the generations. And not, again, when I say generations, it's more like generation, maybe 2 generations. It has been passed down over generations, though. But before the women's liberation of the 1960s, women just didn't simply have the rights that they have today. So even though these mentalities have been passed down through the generations, it's more like when you don't have it, you don't know what you're missing, as much as once you have it, you know exactly what you're missing. So when we think about our own sense of well-being, our own sense of being able to embrace our femininity, being able to embrace our empowerment as women as a whole, and letting go of the notion that we have to constantly compare ourselves to others, whether it be other women, because that's a big sticking point for a lot of women today. With social media, it's that direct comparison to other women who are seemingly perfect on social media. When you look at Instagram, Snapchat, whatever social media, even TikTok, right? Any social media platform you happen to look like, there's always this notion of perfection, whether it's a perfect body, a perfect face, perfect hair, perfect clothes, the perfect meal that they've prepared. So there's always this sense of comparison and competition. And in our new empowered state, we really do not need to go there, because everybody is so unique. Nor is it of value to go there anymore. And I think that our conditioning from the past led us to believe that there was value in going there. So in order to show that we were the better choice, the prized cow or whatever, right? I know it's a horrific way to put it, but in days of past, right? In days of old, when the only thing we were really competing for was the better husband, if you will, in order to do that, we really had to show up better than the neighbor next door or the farm next door, the farm girl next door. But in today's world, there is just absolutely no value in comparison and competition with others, because there is enough room and space for everybody. There is enough room and rights and space and empowerment for everybody. It's not like if you take a job, for example, that doesn't mean there's going to be less of a job for someone else. It's just, it doesn't work that way anymore. The world has expanded so much. Opportunities have expanded so much that these outdated ideas of not feeling worthy, not feeling confident enough, and therefore feeling in comparison or direct competition with others must be non-existent if you are to feel empowered. And that really takes me back to the values that are outlined in this book to feel more empowered. And the idea of abundance, really, because when we're talking about empowerment, we're really talking about expansion. We talk about expansion, we're really talking about abundance. And it could be abundance of love, abundance of happiness, abundance of joy, abundance in monetary value, abundance in expansion of material goods, material things, whatever it happens to be. We are absolutely positively living in times of expansion. We always have. It's just now we recognize it more. And so when you or any other woman you see, because we're talking about women here, I'm a woman, the book is not for women. If you or any other woman that you see is in a position where you're looking at, we're going to take the example of social media again. You're looking at social media and comparing yourself to others posting on social media, or if you are a woman or you know other women who are criticizing, making fun of, cutting down other women, even celebrities, right? This goes across the board. Because when we talk about empowerment, we're talking about raising ourselves to a higher level, right? A higher level mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And even with this sense of competition, with, again, this sense of cutting down other women, even if it's a celebrity, even if it's someone on social media, even if it's a YouTuber, even if it's someone on TikTok, it takes away from your sense of self-worth and it lowers the bar for women across the board. Because that's what we're trying to get away from, right? We're trying to, as a whole, as a collective, as women across the world, we're really trying to move up to the next level of consciousness, hence the title, Divine Feminine. We're trying to move up to the next level of consciousness into a consciousness where we can lift each other up rather than tear each other down. And it's in the lifting up of other women that you lift yourself up, because as we lift up each other in every way, shape, or form, in every aspect of things, realizing that there is no competition, there is no comparison, because everyone is so unique. Everyone has a unique path, and there is no lack of abundance. Abundance is absolutely everywhere. And that as we raise women as a general whole out of shame, as we raise them out of this sense of unworthiness, as we raise them, yourself included, out of this sense of comparison and direct competition, even for a man, right? Even for a love interest, whatever that love interest happens to be, as we raise ourselves out of that, we are raising up the vibration, and we're raising up the vibration for all women worldwide and not just ourselves. And that is what it means to be empowered and feel empowered, is when you can stop feeling like you need to compare with others, that you stop needing to compete with others. As I mentioned, I coach a lot of twin flames. Now, some of you might not even know what that means if you're watching this on replay, and some of you may not even care or may not even believe in twin flames. And the reason I'm mentioning this is about feminine competition, which often happens in dating circumstances, right? It often happens in dating where there's a third party situation and people get up in arms about this third party person, typically another woman in this case of the people that I coach. And they're very upset about it. They're very jealous and very upset, and they're all up in arms, feeling that this other woman, not the man involved, but the other woman has done them wrong. And the one thing I always say to them is there is no competition with this other woman because everybody is where they're supposed to be. And when you can look at situations like that, is that it's not someone, if you have something, if you have a possession and someone is able to take it away from you, not saying that the person is a possession, but if someone's able to take it away from you, then it probably wasn't even meant for you anyway. And if you have a relationship, for example, and that relationship is being distracted because another person is involved in it as well, it probably means that there was something terribly wrong with it. So again, I know that sounds like awful to say, but it's that same principle of there is no reason for you to compete with another person, another woman, even for a dating person, right? Because if you are confident in yourself and you know your self-worth, if that relationship is meant to go away and your person is meant to be with this other person, then so be it. That's what's supposed to happen. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have lost out. It just means that there's something else on the way. There's another person on the way to you. So we can really get into that elevated mindset. And that doesn't mean you can't be upset about what happened. But I feel like a lot of people get really stuck on this sense of competition and jealousy, especially when it comes to dating scenarios, when it has nothing to do with that other person. Absolutely nothing. So I hope this helped to give you a little bit of perspective on the why of this female competition, this why of this female comparison with other people, especially women. I'm not going to say it hasn't happened with men, but most often it has happened in the past several decades with other women. And how we can actually shift that mentality to know that we just don't need to go there anymore. We just don't need to do that anymore. And in fact, it's a detriment to us globally as women as we stay in those lower vibrational frequencies instead of raising our vibrations into these higher vibrational frequencies. And really what self-love is all about is placing the focus back on you, right? It's about placing your awareness, your attention back on you and less on other people and what they are doing, because you are the only person that counts in your life to raise your sense of self-empowerment. Others have nothing to do with that. And so if I helped you a little bit in understanding this, please do give the video a thumbs up, put a comment in the comments section below. You can pick up a copy of this book, The Empowered Divine Feminine, Becoming an Unstoppable Woman in the 21st Century and Beyond. If you're interested in perhaps winning a copy of this book, go to the info box. You can sign up for my Empowering Thoughts newsletter, and the winner will get a copy of this book signed by me. So I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. Thanks for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. Thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this video with other women who could use a little self-empowerment. And I will see you guys next week at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Bye.